I know how to operate. Doctor faints during surgery and nurse saves millionaire patient. Patricia Johnson never imagined that Tuesday would change her life, and so many others, forever. After 30 years working at Mercy General Hospital in Philadelphia, she had seen just about everything, but never a situation like the one she was about to face. "Dr. Richard, the patient is ready," said Patricia, adjusting the equipment in the operating room. The young businessman, Brandon Miller, just 28 years old, lay anesthetized on the table, awaiting emergency heart surgery that could save his life. Dr. Richard Thompson, the most respected cardiac surgeon in the city, nodded and headed to the sink to scrub in. Patricia watched him as she prepared the instruments. Something wasn't right. The doctor looked pale, his hands trembling slightly. "Doctor, are you feeling all right?" the nurse asked. "I'm fine, Patricia. Let's begin," he replied, but his voice sounded off. Patricia knew every expression, every movement of Dr. Richard. They had worked together for over 15 years, and she could always tell when something was wrong. But it wasn't her place to question a doctor in front of the whole team. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Mark, checked the patient's vitals one more time. "All set to begin," he announced. Dr. Richard picked up the scalpel, his hands now visibly shaking. Patricia stood beside him, as she always did, but this time with an uneasy feeling in her chest. "Scalpel," the surgeon requested. When Patricia handed him the instrument, she noticed his hands were cold and sweaty. Just as Dr. Richard leaned over the patient to make the first incision, his body swayed to the side. "Doctor!" Patricia shouted, but it was too late. The renowned surgeon collapsed onto the operating room floor unconscious. The scalpel flew from his hands, clattering loudly against the tile. The patient's heart monitor continued beeping steadily, but the doctor meant to save him was out cold. "Call another surgeon, now!" yelled Dr. Mark, the anesthesiologist, as he knelt to check on his colleague. "There's no cardiac surgeon available right now," replied Jennifer, the scrub nurse. "Dr. Anderson has been in surgery for 6 hours, and Dr. Sarah is out of town." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now back to the story. Patricia looked at the anesthetized patient. Brandon Miller was the son of one of Pennsylvania's wealthiest businessmen, owner of a supermarket chain employing thousands. But at that moment, he was just a young man in desperate need of help. "Let's transfer him to another hospital," Mark suggested, trying to stay calm. "There's no time," Patricia said, reviewing the patient's scans. "Look here, the aneurysm is too unstable. Any sudden movement could be fatal. Transporting him would take at least 40 minutes. The room fell silent. The steady beep of the monitors echoed around them, a constant reminder that a life was in their hands. Then Patricia did something that shocked them all. With firm, decisive movements, she picked up the fallen scalpel and quickly sterilized it. "I know how to operate," she said, in a tone that brooked no argument. "Patricia, have you lost your mind?" Mark shouted. "You're a nurse, not a doctor." "I have a medical degree," she replied, positioning herself over the patient. "I graduated in Cuba 32 years ago, but my license was never recognized here in the United States." Jennifer dropped one of the instruments. "What do you mean?" "Bureaucracy, prejudice, lack of money for the validation process." "A lot of things," explained Patricia, already making the first incision with a precision that impressed everyone. "But that doesn't matter now. This young man will live." Mark hesitated for a moment, but seeing the confidence in Patricia's movements, he decided to support her. "Jennifer, prepare the instruments as she asks. I'll monitor the anesthesia." Patricia's hands worked with a skill that revealed years of suppressed knowledge. Every movement was calculated, every decision made with the certainty of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Retractor," she requested. Jennifer handed her the instrument, watching in awe at the nurse's flawless technique. "Where did you learn to operate like this?" "In Cuba, then on humanitarian missions in Africa," Patricia replied, focused. "I've saved hundreds of lives in conditions much worse than this." As she operated, painful memories flooded her mind. Patricia remembered the day she arrived in the United States at 24, freshly graduated and full of dreams. She had come with her husband, who had secured a job at a construction company in Philadelphia. When she tried to validate her medical degree, she faced a bureaucratic system that seemed designed to exclude people like her, young, black, foreign, and without the money to cover the process costs. After 2 years of trying, she gave up and accepted work as a nurse. "Patricia, look at this," Mark said, pointing to the monitor. "The heart rate is changing." She checked the readings and immediately identified the problem. "There's an obstruction that didn't show up in the scans. I'll have to improvise here." With even more precise movements, Patricia began working on an area not originally part of the surgery. Her years of experience in African hospitals, where resources were scarce and improvisation meant life or death, made all the difference. "Incredible," Jennifer murmured. "She's using a technique I've never seen." Just then, the operating room door swung open abruptly. Gregory Miller, the patient's father, and one of the most powerful men in Pennsylvania, stormed in. His face was red with anger and desperation. "What's going on here?" he shouted. "Where's Dr. Richard?" "Mr. Miller, please stay calm," Mark said. "Dr. Richard fell ill, but Nurse Patricia is taking care of your son." "Nurse?" Gregory grew even more agitated. "You let a nurse operate on my son. Stop this right now." "Sir, any interruption now could be fatal for your son," Patricia said, without looking up from the surgery. "I know what I'm doing." "Are you insane? I'll sue this hospital. I'll ruin all your careers," Gregory threatened. Patricia kept operating, but her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of the surgery, but from the pressure this man was exerting. She knew all too well the power men like Gregory had to destroy lives. "Dad, stop!" a woman's voice shouted. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. Standing in the doorway was Amanda Miller, the businessman's daughter, and a newly graduated doctor who had just arrived at the hospital. "Amanda, thank God you're here," Gregory said. "This nurse is operating on your brother. Do something." Amanda approached the operating table and carefully observed Patricia's work. Her trained medical eyes quickly assessed the technique, precision, and organization of the surgical field. "Dad, she knows what she's doing," Amanda said quietly. "Her technique is flawless." "How can you say that? She's just a nurse." "And I'm a doctor, Dad. Trust me." Amanda positioned herself beside Patricia. "How can I help?" Patricia looked at her with gratitude. "Thank you, doctor. I need you to monitor the blood pressure while I work on this obstruction." Gregory fell silent, watching his doctor-daughter work side by side with the nurse. Even without fully understanding what was happening, he could see there was something special about those hands operating on his son. "Patricia, how did you manage to identify this obstruction?" asked Amanda, impressed. "It didn't show up on any scans." "Experience," replied Patricia. "On humanitarian missions in Africa, we had to rely more on touch and intuition. The equipment there wasn't always reliable." "Humanitarian missions?" Amanda questioned. "I volunteered in hospitals in Uganda, Tanzania, and Mozambique for 5 years," explained Patricia, as she continued the delicate procedure. "After giving up on revalidating my license here, I needed a way to practice real medicine." Amanda was moved by the story. "And why didn't you ever try to revalidate again?" "I tried many times over the years," said Patricia, her voice heavy with old pain. "But there was always a new requirement, another document, a fee I couldn't afford. After my husband lost his job, I had to support the family alone. There was no time or money left to chase bureaucracy." The silence in the room was heavy. Everyone was beginning to grasp the scale of injustice Patricia had faced for decades. "Small retractor," she requested, and Jennifer promptly handed it over. "Patricia," Amanda said hesitantly, "do you have children?" "2 daughters," she replied with a proud smile. "Melissa is a math teacher, and Jessica is an administrator. Both graduated from the state university. They're why I endured working as a nurse all these years, even though I knew I could do so much more." Gregory, who had been quietly observing, stepped closer. "Do your daughters know you're a doctor?" "They do," Patricia said, "and they've always encouraged me to try again. But I was tired of fighting the system. I chose to invest in their education instead." "Blood pressure's rising," Amanda warned. Patricia checked quickly and adjusted her technique. "We're almost done with this critical part. Mark, How's the anesthesia? Stable, replied the anesthesiologist, who was watching the nurse's work in awe. Just then, Dr. Richard began regaining consciousness. Mark helped him sit up, still dazed. What happened? Richard asked, confused. You fainted, Doctor, Mark explained. Patricia took over the surgery. Richard tried to stand quickly, but his legs were still weak. She can't operate. That's against the law. Doctor, you were unconscious, and there was no other surgeon available, Amanda said firmly. She saved my brother's life. Richard finally managed to stand and approach the operating table. When he saw the work Patricia was doing, his eyes widened in surprise. This technique, where did you learn it? He asked, genuinely impressed. Havana, Doctor, Patricia replied without stopping, and later on missions in Africa. My God, Richard murmured. I tried a similar technique last year and failed. Where did you do your residency? National Hospital of Cuba, then specializations in Uganda and Tanzania, she answered. I've worked in conditions you can't even imagine. Richard fell silent for a moment, watching Patricia's every move. As an experienced surgeon, he recognized talent and skill when he saw it. Patricia, why didn't you ever tell me you were a doctor? He asked. Because I knew you wouldn't believe me, she replied honestly. How many times in the last 15 years did you actually listen to me? How many of my suggestions were taken seriously? The question made Richard uncomfortable because he knew she was right. Countless times Patricia had made pertinent observations about patients or suggested different approaches, but he had ignored her, considering her just a nurse. I didn't know, he murmured. No one knew, Doctor. And when I tried to speak up a few times, there was always an excuse not to listen, said Patricia, finishing the suture of an artery. But today that doesn't matter. What matters is saving this young man. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. At that moment, the door to the room opened again and in walked Dr. William Peterson, the hospital's medical director. His face was red with anger. What's going on here? He shouted. Patricia, get out of this room immediately. Dr. William, please lower your voice, said Amanda. The surgery is almost finished. I don't care. This is a serious violation. She's not authorized to operate, yelled William. And letting the patient deteriorate was the better option, challenged Amanda, facing the director. There were protocols to follow. We had to transfer the patient. In 40 minutes he would have been gone, said Dr. Richard, surprising everyone by defending Patricia. She did the right thing. William grew even angrier. Richard, are you defending a nurse who operated without authorization? I'm defending a doctor who saved a life, corrected Richard, and a better doctor than many of us here. Richard's words had a profound impact in the room. Everyone knew he wasn't one to give praise lightly. That doesn't change the fact that it's irregular, insisted William. I'll have to report this to the medical board. Report it, said Gregory, who had been silently observing until then. And when you do, remember to say it was this doctor who saved my son, while the hospital's bureaucracy nearly let him die. William turned pale. Gregory Miller was one of the hospital's biggest donors and a member of the administrative board. Mr. Miller, you don't understand the legal implications. I understand perfectly, Gregory interrupted. I understand that a competent professional was kept from practicing because of red tape, and I understand that if it weren't for her, my son wouldn't be alive right now. Patricia remained focused on the surgery, but inside, she felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was living her dream. On the other, she knew the consequences of that day could be severe. Almost done, she announced. Jennifer, prepare the final suture. Patricia, said Amanda, could you teach me that technique you used for the obstruction? Of course, Doctor, Patricia replied with a smile. It'd be my pleasure. How do you stay so calm in a situation like this? Asked Amanda. When you work in hospitals in Africa, you learn that medicine isn't about expensive equipment or modern hospitals, Patricia explained. It's about knowledge, skill, and above all, love for human life. Richard stepped closer to the table. Patricia, that technique you used, I'd like to learn it too. The nurse looked at him in surprise. "Really, doctor?" "Absolutely," said Richard. "In 30 years of practice, I've never seen anything like it. I learned it from a Cuban doctor who worked in war zones," Patricia explained. "He said emergency medicine teaches you to see what tests don't show." Gregory listened in silence, but inside he was undergoing a deep transformation. He had arrived furious, ready to sue the hospital and ruin careers. Now he was witnessing a lesson in humility and competence he would never forget. "Done," Patricia announced, making the final suture. "The surgery is complete." Everyone watched as she closed the incision with precise, careful movements. When she finished, she checked the vital signs one last time. "How are the vitals, Mark?" she asked. "Perfect," replied the anesthesiologist with admiration. "Better than many surgeries I've assisted with." Patricia finally stepped away from the table and removed her gloves. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nerves but from emotional exhaustion. She had just fulfilled her lifelong dream, but she had also broken every rule in the system. "Dr. Patricia," said Gregory, approaching her, "thank you for saving my son." "Mr. Miller, No, let me speak," he interrupted. "I came here ready to ruin careers and sue people, but what I witnessed today has made me ashamed of many things I've done in my life." Patricia didn't know how to respond. She was used to facing hostility, not gratitude. "You don't need to feel ashamed," she said gently. "You were worried about your son. Any parent would have done the same." "No, I was worried about the doctor's status, not their competence," Gregory admitted, "and that almost cost my son his life." At that moment, William spoke up again. "Well, regardless of the outcome, I'll have to suspend Patricia and launch an investigation." "No, you won't," said a firm voice from the doorway. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was Dr. Catherine Walker, the hospital's director and one of the most respected physicians in Pennsylvania. "Dr. Catherine," William said, visibly nervous, "you arrived just in time. I need to report a serious breach of protocol." Catherine entered the room and took in the scene: the stable patient, the flawless surgery, and a nurse who had just saved a life. "The only thing I see here," Catherine said calmly, "is a professional who saved a life when the system failed. But doctor, she isn't authorized to perform surgery." "And what were you suggesting, William? Letting the patient die while we waited for bureaucracy?" William fell silent. Catherine turned directly to Patricia. "Nurse Johnson, isn't it?" she asked. "Yes, Dr. Catherine," Patricia replied, bracing for the worst. "How many years have you worked at this hospital?" 30 years, doctor." "And how many years have you held a medical degree?" Patricia hesitated but chose honesty. 32 years, doctor." Catherine nodded thoughtfully. "Why didn't you ever validate your license?" "I tried many times, but there were always obstacles. Bureaucratic issues, costs, prejudice. I eventually gave up to focus on raising my daughters." "I see," Catherine said. "And where did you learn the technique you use today?" "In Cuba, and later on humanitarian missions in Africa," Patricia answered. Catherine fell silent for a moment, processing the information. Then, to everyone's surprise, she smiled. "Patricia, I've known your work for years. I always sensed something special in your observations and suggestions. Now I understand why." "Dr. Catherine, with all due respect, we need to discuss the legal implications." "William, we will discuss it," Catherine said firmly. "We'll discuss how this hospital wasted the talent of a skilled physician for 30 years. We'll discuss how our bureaucratic system nearly cost a patient their life today." William stayed quiet, realizing the situation wasn't going as he'd expected. "Patricia," Catherine continued, "starting today, I want you to work with me on developing new emergency surgery protocols, and I want your help identifying other professionals in this hospital who may be underutilized." "Doctor, but my license—" "Leave the bureaucracy to me," Catherine said. "I know people on the medical board who can expedite the validation process. And meanwhile, you'll work as a specialized medical consultant." Patricia Johnson couldn't believe what she was hearing. After 30 years, someone was finally recognizing her professional worth. "But doctor," said William, "this could set a dangerous precedent." "You know what's dangerous, William?" asked Catherine. Having skilled professionals working below their potential while patients need help, that's what's truly dangerous. Gregory, who had been observing everything, stepped closer to Catherine. "Doctor, if funding Dr. Patricia's revalidation process is necessary, I'll cover all the expenses." "Mr. Miller, that's very generous," said Catherine, "but the hospital can handle these costs. In fact, I consider it an investment in medical quality." Amanda, who was monitoring her brother's vitals, announced, "He's starting to wake up from anesthesia." Everyone turned to Brandon, who was slowly opening his eyes. Still groggy, he tried to speak. What happened?" he murmured. "You had surgery, son," said Gregory, holding the young man's hand, "and everything's fine now." Brandon looked around, and his eyes met Patricia's. You were the one who operated?" Patricia approached the gurney. "How do you feel?" "Better," Brandon said with a weak smile. "Thank you for saving my life." "It was my pleasure," Patricia replied, moved. "Dad," Brandon said, still recovering, "I want to hear the whole story later, okay?" "It's going to be quite the story," Gregory said, looking at Patricia with respect. "Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. In the days that followed, the story of the surgery spread through Mercy General Hospital like wildfire. Patricia found herself at the center of a transformation she had never imagined. Catherine kept her promise and expedited the diploma revalidation process. In just 2 weeks, Patricia was officially authorized to practice medicine in the United States. "I can't believe it," she told Catherine during a meeting. "After 30 years, I can finally be who I always knew I was." "Talent always finds a way to shine," Catherine replied. "You proved that by saving Brandon's life." But not everything was easy. William continued to raise obstacles, arguing that the situation set a dangerous precedent. Other doctors in the hospital also resisted the change. "Catherine, you're creating chaos," said Dr. Frederick, head of the cardiology department. "If we start letting nurses perform surgeries, where will it end?" "Frederick, she's not a nurse who decided to operate," Catherine explained patiently. "She's a doctor who was forced to work as a nurse because of bureaucracy." "Even so, it's a dangerous precedent." Catherine was tired of the resistance. "You know what's truly dangerous, Frederick? Wasting talent because of prejudice." Meanwhile, Patricia began working as a medical consultant, helping Catherine review protocols and identify other underutilized professionals. What she discovered surprised her. "Catherine, I found at least 5 nurses with unrecognized medical training," Patricia reported during a meeting. 5? How is that possible? "They're all immigrants or children of immigrants who couldn't validate their degrees," Patricia explained. "Some gave up like I did. Others are still trying." Catherine was shocked. "How did the system overlook this for so long?" "Because no one cared to ask," Patricia said honestly. "When you're a nurse, people assume that's your full potential." Catherine decided to create a special program to identify and help these professionals. "Let's call it the Medical Talent Recognition Program." "That's a great idea," agreed Patricia, "but it will face resistance." "All change faces resistance," said Catherine. "What matters is doing what's right." Meanwhile, Brandon was recovering quickly from surgery. During his follow-up visits to Mercy General Hospital, he always made sure to talk with Patricia. "Dr. Johnson," he said during one appointment, "I'd like to make a proposal to you." "What kind of proposal?" she asked. "My father and I were talking about creating a fund to help professionals like you validate their medical licenses. What do you think?" Patricia was moved. "That would be wonderful. But are you sure?" "Absolutely," said Brandon. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here today. It's the least I can do." Brandon's proposal became the Miller Medical Validation Fund, which would help not just doctors, but professionals from all fields validate their credentials in the United States. "This will help hundreds of people," Patricia told Brandon during the fund's launch. "I hope it helps thousands," he replied. "You've shown me that wasted talent is a tragedy we can prevent, but not everyone was happy with the changes. William kept causing trouble whenever he could." "Catherine, you're turning this hospital into a circus," he complained during a board meeting. "I'm turning it into a place where competence is valued more than bureaucracy." Catherine replied. And if something goes wrong? If one of these rediscovered doctors makes a mistake? William, traditionally licensed doctors make mistakes too, said Catherine. The difference is, we're giving opportunities to professionals who've already proven their skills. The tension between William and Catherine was growing, and everyone at the hospital noticed. Some doctors supported William, others supported Catherine. The hospital was divided. Then something unexpected happened. During an emergency surgery, William made a critical mistake that nearly cost the patient's life. It was Patricia, who was consulting on the case, who spotted the issue and suggested the correction. "Dr. Peterson," she said diplomatically, "I think it might be worth checking the subclavian artery again." William, still operating, snapped back, "Patricia, please don't interfere. I know what I'm doing." But Patricia could see from the monitors that something was wrong. "Doctor, with all due respect, I believe there's an undetected obstruction. I said don't interfere." Then the heart monitor sounded an alarm. The patient was in cardiac arrest. "Chest compressions, now!" Patricia shouted, taking charge. For several agonizing minutes, the team worked to revive the patient. Patricia naturally took command, using techniques she'd learned during her missions in Africa. "He's back," the anesthesiologist announced when the patient's heart resumed beating. William was pale and shaking. He knew he'd made a grave mistake and that Patricia had saved the situation. "Thank you," he murmured to Patricia after the patient was stabilized. "No need to thank me, doctor," she said gently. "We all make mistakes. What matters is working together." The incident completely changed William's perspective on Patricia and Catherine's program. He realized pride and prejudice had clouded his medical judgment. "Catherine," he said a few days later, "I want to apologize. I was wrong about Patricia and the program." "William, admitting fault isn't easy," said Catherine. "Thank you for your honesty." "I'd like to make a proposal," William continued. "I'd like to work with Patricia on developing new emergency protocols. I think she has a lot to teach all of us." Catherine smiled. "I'm sure she'll be happy to help." With William's support, the Medical Talent Recognition Program gained momentum. In 6 months, the hospital had identified and assisted 12 professionals in validating their qualifications. "Patricia, you've created a quiet revolution," said Catherine during an awards ceremony. "It wasn't just me," Patricia replied humbly. "It was the result of many people willing to change." "But you were the catalyst," Catherine insisted. "Without your courage that day in the operating room, none of this would have happened." Meanwhile, Patricia's daughters, Melissa and Jessica, proudly watched their mother's transformation. "Mom, I always knew you were special," Melissa said during a family dinner. "But now everyone knows." "You two are my greatest achievement," Patricia replied, moved. "Everything I did was to give you a better future. And now you can give a better future to so many others," Jessica added. Patricia had to agree. Her work at the hospital was impacting not only the validated professionals, but also the quality of care for all patients. A year after the surgery that changed everything, Brandon organized a celebration at the hospital to mark the first anniversary of the Miller Medical Validation Fund. "Dr. Patricia," he said during his speech, "a year ago you saved my life. But I've come to realize you saved so much more than that. You saved the dreams of dozens of professionals and the lives of hundreds of patients." The audience applauded enthusiastically. Patricia was moved, but also a little uncomfortable with all the attention. "Brandon, thank you so much," she said when it was her turn to speak. "But I want to take this opportunity to talk about something important." Everyone listened closely. "For 30 years I felt invisible in this hospital, not because people were unkind, but because the system didn't allow them to see me. Today I ask everyone here to look around. How many other talented people might be overlooked?" The question lingered in the room, making many doctors and nurses reflect on their own biases and assumptions. "Medicine," Patricia continued, "isn't about diplomas on the wall. It's about knowledge, skill, and above all, compassion. These qualities don't care about skin color, nationality, or social status." When she finished speaking, The room fell silent for a moment before erupting in applause. Catherine approached Patricia after the event. "You have a gift for inspiring people." "I just speak the truth," Patricia said. "And the truth is, we all have the potential to be better." "Speaking of which," Catherine added, "I have a proposal for you." "What kind of proposal?" "The Department of Health wants to expand our program to other hospitals across the country. They want you to lead the national project." Patricia was stunned. "National project? It would be based here in Philadelphia, but you'd travel across the United States helping other hospitals implement similar programs." The offer was tempting, but Patricia had doubts. "Catherine, I've barely gotten used to being recognized here. I don't know if I'm ready for something this big." "Patricia, you've spent 30 years preparing for this without even realizing it," Catherine said. "Your experience, your wisdom, your ability to see hidden talent, all of it is exactly what this country needs." Patricia thought about the proposal for days. She talked to her daughters, Brandon, Gregory, and everyone who had become important in her journey. "Mom, you have to accept," Melissa urged. "Think of how many people like you are out there across the country, waiting for an opportunity." "Your daughter's right," Gregory agreed. "You could transform the nation's healthcare system," but it was a conversation with Dr. Richard that finally convinced her. "Patricia," he said, "you taught me humility. You showed me that experience and wisdom can come from unexpected places. Now you have the chance to teach that to doctors across the United States." "Dr. Richard, thank you," Patricia replied. "Your change of heart meant so much to me." "I'm the one who should thank you," he said. "You made me a better doctor and a better person." Patricia accepted the Department of Health's offer. Her new role would be National Coordinator of the Medical Talent Recognition Program. On the day of her inauguration, held at Mercy General Hospital itself, people from all over Pennsylvania attended. Politicians, doctors, nurses, students, everyone wanted to meet the woman who had turned a moment of crisis into a quiet revolution. "Dr. Patricia," the Secretary of Health said during the ceremony, "you represent the best of American medicine, competence, dedication, and above all, the ability to see potential where others see only limitations." When it was her turn to speak, Patricia looked at the audience and saw faces that represented her journey. Catherine, who had believed in her, Brandon, whose life she had saved, Gregory, who had learned to value skill over status, William, who had overcome his prejudices, Richard, who had become a friend, and her daughters, who had always been her greatest motivation. 30 years ago, Patricia began, I arrived in the United States with a medical degree and a dream of saving lives. The system told me I wasn't good enough, that my knowledge wasn't valid here. Today, I'm not here to prove the system wrong, but to make sure no one else goes through what I did. The audience listened in absolute silence. The United States is full of hidden talent, she continued. Doctors working as nurses, engineers working as technicians, teachers working as aides, not because they lack skill, but because they lack opportunity. My job now, Patricia said, her voice filled with emotion, is to find those talents and give them the chance I almost didn't get. Because I believe that when we value human potential, everyone wins. The applause was long and heartfelt. But for Patricia, the most special moment was seeing her daughters in the front row, tears of pride in their eyes. After the ceremony, there was a reception at the hospital. Patricia moved among the guests, thanking them for their support and discussing plans for the future. "Dr. Patricia," said a young nurse she didn't recognize, "may I speak with you for a moment?" "Of course, dear." "What's your name?" "Emily Taylor," the girl answered nervously. I have a psychology degree I couldn't get validated. I've been working as a nurse for 5 years, but I've always dreamed of practicing psychology." Patricia smiled and placed a hand on the young woman's shoulder. "Emily, we'll talk about your case first thing tomorrow. Sound good?" "Really?" Emily asked, her eyes shining. "Absolutely," Patricia said. "This program exists for people exactly like you." Later that night, when everyone had left, Patricia stood alone in the room where it had all begun. the same operating room where she had made the bravest decision of her life. Catherine found her there, sitting in a chair, taking in the space. "Thinking about the past?" Catherine asked. "Thinking about what lies ahead," Patricia replied. "It's a big responsibility." "You're ready," Catherine said with certainty. "More than ready." "You know, Catherine, there's one thing that still bothers me," Patricia admitted. "What is it?" "How many lives could have been saved if I'd had the courage to fight sooner? How many talents were lost because people like me gave up?" Catherine sat beside her. "Patricia, you can't hold yourself responsible for the past. What matters is what you do from here on out." "You're right," agreed Patricia, "and I promise I'll do everything I can so others don't go through what I did." "I know you will," said Catherine, "because that's what defines you. Not the hardship you faced, but how you turned it into something positive." 6 months later, the National Medical Talent Recognition Program had already helped over 300 professionals across the United States. Patricia traveled constantly, visiting hospitals, speaking with administrators, and identifying hidden talents. During a visit to New York City University Hospital, she met Dr. Charles Montgomery, one of the country's most respected surgeons. "Dr. Johnson," he said, "I've followed your story from the beginning. It's inspiring." "Thank you, Dr. Charles. I hope we can implement the program here too." "Actually," Charles said, "I wanted to share something with you. My father was a doctor in the United Kingdom, but he could never validate his degree here. He worked his whole life as a nursing technician." Patricia was moved. "I'm so sorry for him." "He passed away 2 years ago," Charles continued, "but he always said someone would change this system one day. I think he'd be proud to see the work you're doing." "Dr. Charles, people like your father were the inspiration for this program," Patricia said. "He didn't fight in vain." Stories like this became common in Patricia's life. In every hospital she visited, she met people with experiences similar to hers. Some had given up, others still fought, but they all shared one thing: talents wasted by a bureaucratic system. In Boston, she met Mary Williams, a nurse for 15 years, who held a medical degree from Harvard Medical School. In Washington, D.C., she found Robert Brown, a radiology technician who was a biomedical engineer trained in Canada. In Denver, she spoke with Amy Carter, an administrative assistant with a PhD in pharmacology from Stanford University. "Each of these stories is a personal tragedy and a loss for our country," Patricia said during a national television interview. "What's the solution?" asked the reporter. "The solution starts with recognizing that competence has no nationality," she replied. "We need to simplify the validation process and, most importantly, change our mindset about what constitutes professional qualifications." The interview had a major national impact. The next day, Patricia's office received hundreds of calls from professionals wanting to join the program. "Doctor, we can't handle all these calls," said her assistant Margaret. "We'll hire more staff," Patricia said. "We can't leave anyone without an answer." The program grew quickly, but not without challenges. Some professional boards resisted changes, citing safety and quality concerns. "Dr. Johnson," said Dr. Frederick Ross, president of the Pennsylvania Medical Board, during a tense meeting, "we understand the good intentions, but we can't compromise patient safety." "Dr. Frederick, with all due respect, where is the data proving that doctors trained abroad are less competent?" Patricia questioned. "Well, we don't have specific data, but..." "Then we're making decisions based on prejudice, not evidence," Patricia said firmly. "That isn't scientific." The debate lasted hours. Patricia presented data from other countries that had simplified validation processes and saw improved healthcare quality. "Look at the United Kingdom's example," she said. "They simplified the process and now have one of the best healthcare systems in the world." "But the United States is different," argued Dr. Frederick. "Different how?" Patricia asked. "Do our patients need competent doctors less? Are our emergencies less urgent?" The meeting ended without an agreement, but Patricia didn't give up. She knew that important changes always faced resistance. A few weeks later, something happened that strengthened her position even further. During an emergency at a hospital in Baltimore, one of the doctors revalidated by the program saved a child's life using a technique he had learned in Europe. The technique he used isn't taught in US medical schools, reported Dr. Lucy Wilson, head of pediatrics at the hospital. If it weren't for him, the child wouldn't have survived. The story made national headlines and sparked a debate about the diversity of knowledge foreign professionals could bring to the United States. "See, Catherine," Patricia said during a phone call, "diverse experiences make our medicine richer, not poorer." "I've always known that," Catherine replied. "Now the whole country is learning." The program continued to grow. Within 2 years, it had helped over 1,000 professionals across the United States. Hospitals reported improvements in the quality of care, and patients benefited from the diversity of knowledge and techniques. Patricia was invited to speak at universities, medical conferences, and international events. Her story became a symbol of perseverance and social transformation. During a lecture at the University of Pennsylvania, a medical student asked a question that stayed with her deeply. "Dr. Johnson, don't you regret wasting 30 years working as a nurse?" Patricia took a moment before answering. "You know, young man, I didn't waste 30 years. I gained 30 years of experience that made me the doctor I am today," she said. "If I had revalidated my degree as soon as I arrived in the US, I might never have learned to see the healthcare system from the perspective of those at the bottom. I might never have developed the empathy needed to understand the struggles of other professionals like me." Her answer moved the audience of students. "Sometimes," Patricia continued, "life's detours take us exactly where we need to be to make the difference we're meant to make." After the lecture, several students approached her with questions and shared their own concerns about their professional futures. "Doctor," said a medical student of Haitian descent, "I'm afraid of facing prejudice when I graduate." "Sweetheart," Patricia said, placing a hand on the young woman's shoulder, "you will face challenges, yes. But remember, competence and dedication always speak louder than prejudice. And now you have a system that's changing for the better." 3 years after that life-changing surgery, Patricia received a special invitation. The World Health Organization wanted her to present the US model for recognizing medical talent at an international conference in Geneva. "Patricia, you're going to represent the United States on the world stage," Catherine said, emotional. "It's surreal," Patricia replied. 3 years ago, I was an invisible nurse. Now I'll be speaking to health representatives from around the world." "You deserve every bit of recognition you're getting," Catherine said. The Geneva conference was a milestone in Patricia's career. Delegates from dozens of countries were interested in the US model and wanted to implement it in their own healthcare systems. "Dr. Johnson," said the representative from France after her presentation, "your program is revolutionary. We would like to invite you to help us implement something similar in France." Patricia was moved to see that her personal struggle had become an international movement. Back in the US, she found even more positive changes. The federal government had passed a new law that drastically simplified the process of revalidating foreign medical degrees. "Patricia, you've changed the country," said Brandon during one of his routine visits to the hospital. "We changed the country," she corrected. "Every person who supported this program, every professional who had the courage to try again, every patient who benefited, they all played a part in this change." Brandon smiled. "Always humble. That never changes about you." "You know, Brandon, there's something I want to tell you," Patricia said. "What is it?" "Yesterday I got a call from a young doctor who graduated in Cuba. She just arrived in the United States and already had her medical license validated in just 2 months. 2 months, Brandon. It used to take years." "That's wonderful," Brandon said, genuinely happy. "She's going to work here at Mercy General Hospital," Patricia continued, "in the very same room where it all began." The two fell silent for a moment, reflecting on how much had changed. "You know what's most amazing?" Brandon said. "That day when you saved me, I thought I was witnessing the end of something, but in reality I was seeing the start of a revolution." "Life has a funny way of working like that," Patricia agreed. "Sometimes our hardest moments turn into our greatest triumphs." End of story. Now tell me what you thought of this moving story. Do you believe Patricia made the right decisions throughout her journey? How do you think you would have reacted in her place during that critical moment in the operating room? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to leave a like. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories like this one.